The Sporland division of Parker Hannifin Corporation is sponsoring this podcast. Sporland is the leading manufacturer of HVAC and R components. Using quality materials and craftsmanship, Sporland maintains a commitment to innovation, manufacturing excellence, service, and support for its customers since 1934. The company is known for its catch-all filter dryers, thermostatic expansion valves, solenoid valves, pressure regulating valves, suction filters, electric valves, controllers, supermarket monitoring solutions, chemicals, smart service tools, Zoom Lock Max Press to Connect, and Zoom Lock Push to Connect refrigerant fittings. If folks want to learn more, what do they do?
You can go to sporland.com.
I guess that's Jim and John for Sporland signing off.
This episode is sponsored by United Refrigeration and Westermeyer Industries, revolutionizing your HVACR experience. Visit URI.com for all your HVACR needs, offering real-time inventory, personalized pricing, and a nearby stock feature. Access quick pick replacement parts and branch details effortlessly. With 350 plus fully stocked locations across North America, our knowledgeable staff are ready to assist with the solutions you need. Exclusive offer. Use code ARPOD on URI.com to get a $10 gift card when purchasing the Westermeyer oil float, part number W4300-38F. These high-performance floats are not just compatible with their own oil separators, but also available as a crossover model, conveniently stocked at United Refrigeration. That's code ARPOD to claim your $10 gift card. Visit URI.com now.
That's right. I got to tell you about the cat I almost inherited last night. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. You're the host, Brett Wetzel and Kevin Compass. How is your week going? I already know, so I can't wait for this.
That's weird. The printer just started printing randomly. It's creepy. Haven't used that printer in a month. So
Maybe your wife's sending you a message that she hates you, and that's how she's doing it. Because you're not picking up your phone or something?
No, she already yelled at me before she left. It's my daughter printing pictures. That's even weirder. So, yeah, my week's been jacked up. I had the startup from hell last week and into this week. So, been dealing with that. And then I had to run down to Indy to help a bunch of guys get a newer store cleaned up that we've already done 3 times now.
Cool.
So I had the CO2 startup from hell. Like, I have never had one fight me this hard on startup. So last week, we go to fire the rack up on Wednesday, runs for 3 minutes, builds up to 1,200 pounds, 1,300 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And the check valve on the discharge and the outlet of the oil separator blows apart. Just splits the heliarc weld all like 3/4 of the way through.
And apparently that's not a new thing, because like I had talked to a couple people, not just the people that were posting the same stuff. They're like, oh yeah, I had that happen too. So it's either a bad batch or something, man.
Or
fire the robot.
Yeah, so we get that fixed, and of course it comes in on Friday, so that turns into Friday startup. What could go wrong on a Friday startup? Go to try to start it, and the high pressure valve won't open. It opened at one point because we checked it, and some cables got crisscrossed, and somebody didn't do their due diligence when we were forcing the valves open and closed, and it was swapped with the flash gas bypass valve.
Wait. Say that one more time.
So we forced the valves open and closed before we started the rack.
Gotcha.
And I had somebody else with their hand on it and listening to it drive to make sure it's the right valve. So that OEM thought he heard one valve and he heard a different valve.
Damn it.
They flip-flopped the cables and it looked 100% right. If you look at the cables, one's a gray cable, one's a black cable. Down below, they flip-flopped the cables where they spliced them. So the gray cable went to the black cable went to the gray cable. So that caused this Emerson CV valve to get overdriven. It's only 800 steps, and
What was the other one?
3,600 or something. So there she went. That then caused the iPro XEV valve driver to somehow short, and it drove the flash gas bypass valve to Jesus. And
Which way did Jesus? Jesus closed or Jesus open?
Jesus off the stem. So we didn't know this at the time because I couldn't get the thing to run more than like a minute. And it was just high heading. It wouldn't open. So forced it open the SMA. It opened a little bit, but it was so laggy because the problem is those Alco valves or Emerson valves are 800 steps. So trying to open it with an SMA is extremely difficult.
Wow. Okay.
So even at like 50 steps, like you barely touch it and it's like instant wide open. So it's like you barely can do it. We had that, couldn't keep the rack running. So they send me a new one. They said they don't exist anywhere in the country right now. So I had to get a Danfoss valve and I had to repipe the whole high pressure side.
Isn't that, was it stainless or XHP?
Stainless to XHP. So I had a transition joint. And
How'd that work?
I had to silver solder it, and it was in the worst spot possible.
So you put the XHP inside a collar?
So it's a transition fitting. So the Danfoss valve is stainless, and it goes into there, and it gets silver soldered. And then the other side is size for XHP. Or apparently I say it backwards every time because I'm dyslexic.
I always, and I have to check myself. It's extreme high pressure, XHP.
Yeah. So that got done, and that was an absolute nightmare. And they shorted us a bushing, which trying to find a bushing is a nightmare. Thank God the one supply house by us has a ton of he has a ton of random fittings in his office for when this happens. So these bushings now, they want you to use these short bushings. So it literally looks like a copper ring that's a 1/4 inch thick, and it goes inside of the cup, and it's a short bushing. It's not an elongated bushing. It is an absolute nightmare to try to burn it on a stainless because this thing's a 1/4 inch thick. So trying to heat the stainless and then this 1/4 inch thick piece of copper and silver solder both joints. And then I had to silver the next joint because it's so hot that you can't control the heat from where it is, that you can't 15 it. You have to end up using silver, and trying to get a good joint with that was a nightmare.
Because it's thin, right? It's real thin. So what were you using, like 56 rod or something?
Yeah, the blue 56 rod. And then it's exploding in your face the entire time. The flux is just like boiling up. And then I'm up in the rack like a T-Rex, like with my face up in between two pipes. And I have a mirror in my mouth and a 30 tip trying to get this to move around because it's 1.5 on one side.
Oh, that's a lot of. What? So someone said something to me about stainless, and I forget what they said. What makes when you go from copper to XHP to stainless so difficult? Is it because you're overheating the XHP constantly, or if you overheat the stainless, it does something weird to the metal?
So it does something weird to the metal, but it doesn't flow real good. So you got to get the copper hot first and try to push the heat into the stainless and then get it to flow. It's like that's the problem, is trying to control your heat and get it to where it's going to flow, and then keeping the stainless clean because it gets like oxidized as soon as you take a torch off of it, and then the 56 doesn't want to stick.
Oh, that's what they were saying. Yeah.
So I don't use the white paste flux. And so what happens is if you burn it, you're screwed. So I always use the 56 rods, and I clean the living out of it with the die grinder.
And you still had a bitch of a time getting it.
It wouldn't have been that bad if it wasn't in such a shitty spot.
If you wouldn't have to T-Rex it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have to T-Rex it. That was not the printer's going again. Jesus, that was a bad situation. We get it all hooked up, and of course, there's no cable. The valve was missing the cable, so we had to take a Sporlan cable and retrofit that, and we had to sit there and figure out where the pins are, where they line up, and what windings go where. So get that taken care of. Go to fire it up, it won't run. Now it's slightly open, and the receiver pressure won't come down. And the valve driver is smoking hot at this point, like smoking hot. So we end up pulling apart the flash gas bypass valve. It walked the disc off that it drives into.
Did it overdrive?
So it's not supposed to be able to overdrive it off. So
Is this the Danfoss CCM, right?
yes. So if you don't take it apart, it says you can take it apart.
Don't take it apart.
It is an absolute nightmare to get it back together. So you could screw it back on, but the way you have to do it is you have to literally pull the plunger up. It looks like a 1/4-inch rod coupler in there, and it's plastic. You have to screw the valve on 2 to 3 turns onto the rod coupler, and then feed it back in gently, screw back down, and then zero it out a couple times. But it will not. I thought this thing was junk. It will not positively shut with pressure going backwards. So if the receiver pressure is higher than the pressure, if the suction pressure is higher than the receiver pressure, it'll flow backwards. It's using that flow to help close it.
Really?
So the way it's like a solenoid valve, the way they machined it. So the pressure comes in and pushes down on the diaphragm.
And that's what assists it close. So I guess if you have messed up flash tank pressures as well as messed up
if you had higher suction pressure than flash tank pressure, that's what
I mean. Like if you have them interfering where it just doesn't know what it's doing because of crappy tuning, that would.
I thought this thing was junk. I took it apart like 7 times because we were just bumping it on. We had 2 ball valves in between it and a packed angle on this side, or on this side, and I would just crack the suction ball valve, and it would flow backwards like just a tiny bit, just like maybe 5-6 psi. So I'm like, what the hell? This thing won't zero. We can't get it to do nothing. So we end up finally just starting it up. I'm like, we got to get this rack going. We start it up, takes off, rack starts running beautiful. No issues. We had to change the XEV driver first because it wouldn't drive any of the valves after we took it apart.
After overdriving all those other valves for X amount of length, right?
Yep. It wouldn't. It's the XEV valve driver was hot as could be. So my thing is, what I think happened is, I think the CV valve smoked the XEV valve driver, and I think it put voltage to the other valve and just stepped it off till it stopped till it ran it off.
Did you check the other valve? It sounds like you were busy as hell. Did you check to see if it actually shorted it out or what?
So the CV valve driver will move on an SMA. But if you hook it to the CV valve, if you hook it to the Dixel, it won't move. But if it only opens and closes like 2 or 3 times, and then the motor heats up and it won't open on the SMA anymore.
Yeah, and I've had that on other valves because people have asked me, like, what voltage are you supposed to get out of a lot of these drivers? Historically, anywhere from 12 to 18 volts is typically what I'm seeing, depending on if it's an ESR board or some kind of some kind of other valve driver?
So what you have to do is you have to put your meter on AC volts.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on AC volts, and it's whatever winding is opening and closing. I've been seeing 12 to 16 out of these iPro XEV drivers.
Gotcha.
So around there. Some of the Danfoss ones I've seen like 12 to 15, 12 to 18 volts.
It's in the same ballpark, though.
Yeah. Now, this was another thing that came up, and it was a real problem, is the step rates. And it is not super clear in the manual, and it's been an issue. So
let me start off by saying, in the older Dixels, like the older iPro rack controllers and all that other stuff, when I first started seeing those about, I don't know, 8 years ago or something, or 7 years ago, it was always the steps was actually multiplied by 10. Did this get changed at some point?
I don't know. There's been all kinds of revisions, and some stuff is times 10, some stuff isn't. Now, when you get to the iPro, any valve steps is times 10. So meaning like you say your max valve steps, say it's 700. That's 70. So it's 70 times 10 is 700. So any valve setting max steps is times 10.
So if you're in the E3 and you're programming it like that, it's still 70 equals that.
Yes.
Equals 700.
Step rate is not times 10.
The overdriver is, though.
The overdriver is not times 10.
So the overdrive is an actual...
that one I'm still waiting for clarity on. I think it's times 10.
Okay, so go through that one more time, because it seems okay.
Step rate is time. So your step rate is not times 10. So if it's 200 steps a second, it's 200. If it's 150 steps a second, it's 150.
So specific steps, as far as if it's 700 steps, then it's actually programmed in there as 70.
Correct.
Crap.
And then the other thing, the valve current and holding current is not times 10. If it's, I'm sorry, that one is times. If it's 300, it's going to be 30.
I took some pictures today. I'm wondering if I got to reprogram something. Yeah, looks like I got to reprogram something, because it looks like I have. I didn't get the other number in there, but it looks like I have 750. So it's actually programmed as 7,500 then.
Yes.
Shit. Okay. Got to fix that tomorrow.
So, and the same thing with like pressure settings, like pressure, like transducers, those are all times 10. Like some set points are times 10 too for like your pressure set points. So you got to watch. And I'm going to mark up something eventually where what it is, what it's times. And
because I mean, that's going to screw you on everything you do. One, it's going to overcycle a whole bunch of valves, right? All right. And then it's going to wear the shit out of the valves if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing.
So me personally, with overdriving valves, like I don't like this whole 10%, 5%. I don't think they need to be overdriven that much. Like you shouldn't be losing position at all. Like just a slight bit. I like what microthermal does, and you could set it to 10 or 20 steps. And that's all it is. I think overdriving valves 10% strips the shit out of them. And that's why so many stepper valves fail, because they're overdriven way too much.
So I'm going to show you something on the camera right now, because this is where I'm confused. So I took a picture of the regular Dixel, right? And behind it, it just says 10 steps. You know what I mean? This kind of clarifies it right there. So whatever I have in there. So right now the HVV apparently is set for 7,500 steps, and then 500 steps per second, and then 150 steps. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it is extra steps is not times 10 then. So extra steps is not times 10. So that's 150 extra steps. So if you went 10% of what 750 is, that, I don't know, I'm too beat up to do math right now.
Too broken.
Yeah. So that's one thing.
It'd be about 75 steps.
Yeah.
it's 750. 10% of that would be 75 steps.
Yeah. So that's more than 10%.
All right. Well, I'll math it while you're thinking about other things. Go ahead.
So the other thing is to keep an eye on the valve current, because if you guys have the valve current wrong, it's going to smoke these valves. And specifically pay attention to the Danfoss valves. And the literature is not the best for this.
No, it's 75. You're right. You're
Is
right.
it?
Yeah, it's because I did 750 minus 90%, which is 75 steps. It's 10%.
Yeah, you have it set to 150.
I know that now.
What?
I got to look. It was once again. I got to look at the manual that I downloaded because what I downloaded it said 150 steps. You know what I mean? It didn't say 10%. I don't know. I got to look at that manual again.
Yeah, Danfoss is very specific, and I'm assuming it was a CC valve.
No, this is the EX4, EX6 or whatever.
Yes. So
Yeah.
just so you guys know, these EX valves and CV valves, do not pull vacuums with them plugged in.
Today's episode is sponsored by the RefRushield RDP Series differential pressure monitors from Westermeyer Industries, now available for transcritical CO2 systems in addition to other common pressures and refrigerants. When the filter element of your coalescing oil separator is contaminated, it can hurt your system's performance and efficiency. But how do you know when it's time to replace that filter? Wait too long to replace, and you could end up with a nasty filter blowout. But replacing too often can be a waste of time and money. The answer is installing a differential pressure monitor. The RDP Series differential pressure monitors, including the new transcritical CO2 model, are available now from Westermeyer Industries. To find out more information, email sales@westermeyerin.com. That's WESTERMEYERIN.com.
Yes.
Yeah, don't do it because they'll overheat and burn out.
So we talked about this at a place that I went. We were discussing it, and I brought it up, and the guy goes, "Wow, that's why we've had some failures." So, because a lot of these stores, they're programmed to reset like once every day or once every week. So if you happen to be doing a vacuum overnight, 24 hours or whatever, you're doing a 24-hour hold, and then all of a sudden, because that valve driver is essentially in there, the reason why is because it has a wet stator. Okay, what that means is essentially the windings are actually sitting in the vacuum. If anyone's ever heard the old timer say, "Hey, don't ever activate a compressor while you're in a vacuum," I'm assuming because it changes something with the physics of the insulation, and essentially it'll cause those windings to short. So same principle goes here. That's why I decided in the class, like, I don't pull vacuums on that one trainer because I'm like, if I do it, I know I'm going to pay attention. But let's just say someone doesn't know that, and God forbid, I forget to tell someone. Now I think that trainer rack has eight of those those EX valve numbers on there. You know what I mean? So then I have 8 bad valves, and I don't have a class that week.
Yeah, and you can't get them because there's none left right now. So
yeah, man, I'd be welding like a T-Rex all over the damn place too. So that would be just awesome.
Yeah. So really pay attention when setting those steps up. And that's the same for a 326A and whatever other valve driver. If you have another Danfoss driver, you have microthermal, except microthermal is the steps are the steps. So if it's 2,500 steps, it's 2,500 steps. If it's this many steps a second, it's this many steps a second. It is 100% straightforward. Yeah. That's one thing to be aware of. It is more of these CO2 store rollout. And the other thing is the valve wiring. Half the manufacturers, when we get the racks, the valve wiring and the print is wrong.
Oh, they're not half. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, so just pay attention to how it's wired, because Danfoss, for example, you need to invert black and white
When you're hooking it up to the iPro.
Yeah, or if you're going from Sporlan to anything else, it's usually black and white. You got to invert you got to flip the windings around for what it normally would be.
Gotcha.
And then make sure if you have splices, like follow the cables, and if they don't look the same, trace down the splice because there's a high probability that they switch colors and at the splice.
Gotcha.
That's one other thing to be aware of if you guys are doing those. Other than that, this is my first time really using the E3, so trying to get used to that.
It's different, right? I'm not like against it. It's just different for X amount of years, 20 years. You all the things to get into to go to where. So one of the hardest things that I had to try to figure out again, because I've been showed it before, but if you don't, it's like anything else. You don't use it all the time. You're like, how do you do that? Trying to override values.
Yes. Oh my God. I was so frustrated trying to figure it out. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay. You got to go over here or you got to be in edit. Like,
yes.
And why is the delete button next to the save button?
Because everyone hates you.
I found that one out the hard way. I went, oops, there goes the CC200.
Oh, really? So you're doing CC200s on this project, huh?
Yes. Which that was a learning curve. I like the CC200s.
Mm-hmm.
They're laid out very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the case manufacturer didn't program any of them.
Really?
So there's a cloud that you have to get approved for the app, and then you call support, and all these are on a cloud. So you basically choose whatever Sam's Club or Walmart you're at. This is where we're doing it. And you could go on there, and I could choose the store and say 21101, just random store, and it's okay. Here's the program for AO5A. As long as it's there, 90% of the time it is. And you could download the program off the cloud, off your phone, into the case controller.
For that particular case?
For that particular case.
That's pretty badass. Is that something that the customer that you're installing it does or what?
No, that's what they're doing it to back it up.
In Emerson.
Like we didn't have the E3 was not live for anything until because we're 90% of the cases in the store are still in the DX racks and they're getting changed out. There was no way to download it. There's no E3 until last week. So now you're still downloading off that. The only thing that's weird is you can't change. So you can change everything from the app you need to change. Like you can get in there, like when you're doing the remodel, they have it open. Like I could go through and I could delete a coil sensor if it's not there. I could change whatever I need to change, the valve type, everything. The only thing that sucks is you can't change a case ID.
Oh.
So if that case is AO5A, it's AO5A. Like the only one that could change it is Copeland.
Really?
So it's just easier to swap the case controller.
Oh, swap it with the one that it's supposed to be?
Yes. A lot of wiring issues, like every valve crossed in cases.
Yeah, but that's a manufacturer thing. That's not a...
Yeah. Other than that, like it's kind of like the Sporlan controller. It's very close, like the apps.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It looks like a copy of the Sporlan controller from the app wise. So like if you could move around in the SC3 app, you could move around in this app. Super user friendly, but the E3 has definitely been a like steep learning curve because I'm used to being able to grab it, and I don't know, like I don't know if this is me getting older or what, but I don't like touchscreens. I would rather have buttons.
You're basically becoming a boomer.
It's just easier with like greasy fingers and stuff. Like the E3 on a laptop kicks ass, like blows the E2 away.
Yeah. Did you link up a router to it?
We did not. I just plugged right in with my laptop because I was on the roof already. It kicked ass, but like on the screen, it's just like I'm so like lost with moving around quick.
Yeah, and I still haven't gotten real good. I haven't had the freaking time. I've been working on other things, but being able to create like custom because you can do custom
Yes.
custom screens. So you could put a tile that has your BGV, your HPV, and all your other important information for that.
So what I like is you could add it to the suction group now. So you could just drop down the suction group, and I could choose the BGV, I could choose HPV, I could choose subcooling, and I could choose the receiver pressure and droplet pressure. And I can watch it all from the suction group. So when I'm starting up the rack, I can see all the pertinent information right there.
So I will say one of the other things you do have to watch out for is for anything that's Modbus in. Son of a bitch. Damn it. Anything that's Modbus in, not only do you have to save the change, but you also then have to write the configuration to that particular device.
So what I notice now is a lot of the times I didn't have to set point changes. It was doing it automatically.
Wait. Except for on like stuff that like the iPro rack.
Yeah, the iPro was just pushing it automatically.
I would still recommend doing it because you don't want to be like, oh, it does sometimes. No, just don't. And it doesn't like totally shut down. Like it acts funny for a little bit because I don't know if it closes itself down. I think maybe if you don't do any valve. No, it didn't. I don't remember. It naturally just changes the set point and stuff. I didn't see it actually close down. So like with the pack controller, that's one of the only thing that kind of stinks is when you change something with a pack controller, basically you have to shut it down in order to make your changes, which kind of sucks because if you're tuning or whatever, it's going to throw you for a loop.
Yeah, no, like the pack controller is definitely a pain to deal with that. I think shutting it down is a bad deal.
Yeah, especially if you're tuning the damn thing.
It's almost impossible to PID tune that. So the other thing that was a little bit weird with that was like the sensor controls is just like, so it's everything laid out goofy.
Yeah. I just want to share this real quick for anyone on here. So while Kevin was talking about that, so I have the how they want you to essentially hook up the wiring of some of these things. Sporlan, I've never even heard. So this is a unipolar motor. I've never even heard of that one. But these are all the bipolar ones, right? So you have white, yellow, brown, and green. And then you have the Outgo EX5 6, which is blue, brown, black, and white. And then Sporlan, right? White, black, red, green. And then Danfoss, white, black, red. What, really?
What?
I thought it was, well, no, I thought it was swapped. It's exactly the same.
It's a mistake.
Maybe this is the ETS valve. Maybe this isn't talking about the CCM valve.
They're the same wiring.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that's what got me is that one is not correct.
Damn it.
So the other thing you guys need to watch is on the iPro, on the EXV driver, it's 1324.
For what?
On the actual things they have a split up. It's 1 and 3. It's pin 1 3. Then it goes 2 4. It's not 1 2 3 4.
Oh yeah.
It's split winding, so like that screws everybody up, especially with these guys wearing at the factory because they're used to going red, green, black, white, red, green, black, white. And it's not like that.
This is what you're talking about. So it's messed up because you have 5 first, and 5 is your voltage, your 12-volt voltage for your unipolar motor. But like you'd think it would go 1, 2, 3, 4. Nada. It's not what it does. Screwy stuff like that. That's funny.
Yeah, so that was my week with that. And then we've finally wrapped up our piping on this rack, this geothermal rack. So pulling vacuums on that tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes.
What is it? E3 powering that, or is that an E2?
E3 powering that.
Yeah. Oh, did you figure out your valve, your staging on your pumps yet?
Travis and me started going through some stuff, and we're going to try to reverse a suction group. and use the suction group to control the pumps with a flex to drive the set point. So it reverses the action. So when it needs, instead of when the pressure is low, it's going to need more pumps to increase the GPM.
But I thought the other pumps were just basically backups.
So it's
apparently not.
Nobody knows. So there's 3 pumps on the Geo loops are 100%. It's one pump is enough to do it. The domestic hot water is just one pump, so it's just on or off. The chilled water is to the store is 3 pumps. The heating water to the store is 3 pumps. So it's a backup, and I'm assuming 2 pumps running at 75-80%. And the chilled water mixing is 2 pumps, so it's primary backup.
Interesting.
So we're going to try to play with it tomorrow.
Yeah, and?
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's going to be really complicated. They need to just bite down and make a pump application, because like now they're using everything with heat reclaim for everything. They're using glycol for whatever else. So at one point they're just going to have to bite the bullet and just make a can function for that. They started doing it for everything else.
I've been asking for it for forever because it comes up, and I've done some pretty sweet flexes, but the problem is they get very large and ridiculous. And for this application, you would need 13 flexes and 13 loop sequence controllers, and that's just a lot.
Yeah, there's no real easy way to do that.
No. And that's why like Block Logic is nice. Like with Block Logic, you could do that all in one thing, and it would be easier.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's been my week so far. That iPro and that Danfoss valve was a huge learning thing today or this week. It was a huge kick in the nuts. But then as soon as that rack fired up, hour and a half, everything's down to temp, purring away, check a few things, and it's just off running.
Nice. I didn't have an eventful week. I'm in Houston, but it was just getting things ready for this program that we're doing, and that was it.
Is it this disgustingly hot over there?
It was in the shop. I was out there last night till about 2 a.m. working on some stuff, and it was 83 degrees and locker room humidity.
Ugh.
Yeah, so it's been utterly amazing. Funny story though, I was after I left, I went to the gas station to get something to drink. I pull in the gas station, and someone starts. There's 2 girls that are trying to talk to me for some reason, and I avoid people usually, but I avoid anyone at 2 o'clock in the morning because I was like, "What do you want?" And they said something, and normally you can figure out what people say based off of normal conversation, but what they were saying didn't make any sense because what they said was just weird, and so. Then 2 other people would walk by and they did the same thing. They said something to me and it didn't make it. I couldn't hear because I'm deaf anyway. And I was in the car and the car was running. And then finally they come up to my window. Is like, "Do you have a cat in your car?" I was like, "That's what I thought you were mouthing," but I was really confused. And I was like, "No, why?" He's like, "Your car is meowing." I said, "No, it's not." So I turned off the car. And sure as shit, there's a cat. There's a small kitten stuck like right next to my radiator up into my little soccer mom vehicle for work. And so 2 o'clock in the morning, there's 3 police officers and 5 different bystanders trying to get this cat out of my car.
Why is it the weirdest shit happens to you like 2 o'clock in the morning?
I don't know. That's why I was avoiding people because I didn't want. It was just weird. And they're like, "We didn't understand why you were saying thank you." I was like, "I don't understand why you were like mouthing, 'Do I have a cat?'" I thought it was a joke. I thought there was a punchline somewhere, but no, there was a cat. Weirdest thing.
That is weird.
Oh, if Brian's listening, what's up, bud? Just letting you know. Is that it? Like, you talked about your day for 30. That was good, though. That was good and informative. Anything else you want to talk about before we roll off?
No. My brain's dead. And then I spent all day today messing with air doors, and I despise air doors with a dying passion.
Yeah. They still using the ones with the coil, or they get rid of them?
So I had to rip the coil out because they're getting rid of the coils.
Nice.
And to be honest, I'm starting to think they cause more problems.
Yeah, because they block up.
This thing was plugged.
Yeah,
Looks like a condenser behind a store that's like with a rag house on the ground with just like paper bags and leaves. I'm like, how the leaves get in here?
Wonderful. All right, guys. We'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks for listening.